Please go ahead, Aya.
Okay, thank you so much. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Akanda Mandala Akaram Vyaptam Yena Chara Charam Tatparam Darsitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Atma Namaskaram. Welcome everyone to the session. Very happy to be here and have to thank Sri Vidya Temple Society as well as Aya for inviting me to give a short lecture on Sri Vidya. Also have to thank Max for making a beautiful presentation that you'll see shortly. I had only rough notes and text, and Max in his normal fashion, of course, made something which was beautiful and quite magical. So thank you so much. Let's get right into it because we have a lot to cover. Let me see if we can share the screen. Okay, Sri Vidya Tantric Revelation course. What is the Tantric revelation of Sri Vidya and how does it relate to other Tantric revelations? So just a quick thing here. We did post this already in the group and you can download this PDF as well. So if you have any problems with internet or things fail, don't worry. This PDF is in the classroom and you can follow along there as well. So let me just move this here. Wait. Okay, wait. Are you still seeing? Yeah? Okay, good. Okay. Learn about the amazing depth, diversity, and history of Sri Vidya tradition as we explore its history as a tantric revelation. So this would be the main point of today's class. What is a tantric revelation? And get introduced to Sri Vidya's foundational acharyas and principal texts. So this will be a series of 3 courses altogether. We will begin to understand Sri Vidya's place in the universe of Shaiva Tantra, explore its basis as a revelation, and briefly survey its founding figures and texts. Okay, another key point about the course: open to curious minds as well as to experienced upasakas and practitioners. So since this is an introductory course, certain things we won't be covering and certain things, of course, we will be covering. So here's a schedule of courses for everyone who may not know. We'll start today with Revelation. We'll move on to texts next week. And then on Sunday, we'll do the foundational acharyas. Okay, very quickly, just what we will be not covering, just in case, people might have some questions which I'm not qualified to answer outside of the scope of our discussion today. Initiation, advice on finding a guru, and issues in practice. That we won't be discussing today. And also in-depth Sri Vidya doctrine. Since this is open access course with no prerequisites, it's a little bit tricky. Some people may have a lot of knowledge on the doctrine, some people may not have any knowledge. So just to keep everything on a level platform, we just won't discuss too much anything in doctrine. Maybe in the future, there'll be courses where we can do something which is completely in-depth on a particular text or a particular doctrine. Okay, Zoom etiquette, please keep your camera on if possible. I love to see you as well. And also muted. That's not to silence you, that's just for everyone so that in case someone is sneezing or doing something else, washing their dishes, it's not distracting to other people. If there's ever a question during the course, please just raise your hand or put it in the chat and we will address the questions, absolutely. There will of course be question and answer at the end, or we can take all the questions if there are any about anything. Okay, let's just jump right in and just discuss a little quickly, why are we even here learning these things? Sri Vidya is famously called as a upasana padati or a upasana marga. It's a practice-based system, right? So usually learning sometimes gets sidelined in people's minds. So why should we learn all extra things, details, and things like that? And if we're doing mantra japa, we're doing our puja, we're doing the homos, the yantra pujas, we're going to the temple doing seva and guru seva, what more do we need, right? And there's a lot of truth to that, of course, but there's also an aspect of learning which is important, right? And so just to kind of clarify really quickly here, on me, I would say 2 different approaches to learning. One might be considered as a purely academic or intellectual approach, right? Just learning for the intellectual stimulation of it. You can find this both in the West as well as in India as well. People who are just interested in just learning more and more facts, more and more ideas, and never really putting anything into practice and just kind of really just kind of addicted to learning, And then there's another side, which is kind of like the opposite, which is just addicted to practical approach. I don't need to learn anything actually. I'm just doing the puja. I just do the japa mantra. No extra learning at all, right? And so this is kind of the opposite side. Our approach here is to kind of use knowledge and learning as an enhancement to your sadhana, right? They don't have to be two separate things. You don't have to have knowledge on one side and practice on the other side. Actually, if you really start thinking about the difference between knowledge and practice, the whole thing falls apart. Actually, how can you practice if you don't have any knowledge, right? So you get mantra diksha, you learn the mantra, and that's all you need. And then later on, you find out you might need nyasam as well. Now you have to learn nyasam. Okay, fine. Now you have to learn puja. So learning and practice will actually go hand in hand, right? So that's going to be our approach. Everything we learn should create some kind of enhancement to our practice. Now, what kind of knowledge? Here's the next. This is a very strong statement, a nice warning from the Upanishads, right? Into blind darkness they enter, people who worship ignorance, avidya, and into still blinder darkness, people who delight in learning, vidya. This is to be striking to us immediately as Sri Vidya Upasikas, right? My goodness. What in the world could this possibly be meaning, right? Well, there's different types of knowledge, and this is what the warning is here. There's a spiritual knowledge, which is inherently liberating, and there's also worldly knowledge, which is also can be binding, right? And so there's binding types of knowledge and liberating types of knowledge. So we want to make sure that we're, in a certain sense, going after the purely liberating knowledge, but also as we look closer into like Lita Sahasranama, we find out that actually she's beyond both of these types of divisions of vidya and avidya, right? So she's the vidya swarupini. She's the one who is both knowledge and ignorance. And her sadhana not only gives the Upanishadic discriminatory ability, the viveka, to discern between real and unreal and go towards real, right? Go towards liberation, or the pursuit of knowledge, which is liberating over binding. But she gives us the Paramadvaita knowledge of our true nature, right? Paramananda, devoid of all differences, right? Dvaita varjita, which includes Dvaita and Advaita and knowledge and ignorance. So the Supreme Goddess is actually beyond Vidya and Avidya, and that's kind of where we have to keep our minds as well. And yet we do have to remind ourselves about just whatever kind of shastric injunctions may be there. I think they're nice to keep in mind. Okay, and yet, despite this, Sri Vidya is an ocean of knowledge and bliss, right? Sri Vidyarnava. And learning constitutes an indispensable part of this because she is the Shastramai, right? When knowledge, when it's pursued unchecked without sincerely repeated efforts of daily sadhana, meaning you're not doing any practice at all, you're just learning for the heck of it, especially without the guidance of a guru, the possibility of the learning and knowledge becoming completely logika, worldly, and therefore binding is much greater, right? And so we're blessed. We're here at the Sri Vidya Temple Society. We have Ayya, we have Guruji, and I assume most people are connected to Ayya or Guruji in one way or another, or to the Devi to be in the class. So we feel very blessed by that. And so the difference between these types of knowledge can be checked by your guru and also through your own sadhana over time, right? So that's just a quick little warning about knowledge. Okay. Now let's talk about a little bit fundamental differences between those who study and those who practice. This is very important because there's an idea in many upasikas' minds. It was in my mind as well a few years back, and I hear it a lot, you know. We study and we do the study and the learning, and then the other side is, you know, we do the practice, right? And so I'm saying that this is largely a false dichotomy, right? There's not necessarily two mutually exclusive things, right? And so there is a tension between knowledge and practice, and it has a long history, right? All the way back into Vedic religion, all the way through pan-Indic, right? Knowledge and action, the difference between knowing something and doing something, right? It's a guiding principle, actually. The deeper you go into the pujas, the deeper you go into the jnana, the knowledge, you'll see this tension. And you'll see all the commentators and acharyas and the great founding figures talking about this tension between knowledge and practice. So we won't go too deep into that, but it's good to recognize that it's there, right? So what does this kind of culminate in? On one side, it might be like a university professor. He just knows everything or she knows everything. And, you know, they just They never practice. Why should we practice? We know everything, right? And then the other side is kind of like maybe very senior upasakas, maybe even guru level. They know, they practice everything, but they don't have to learn anything more, right? Because they have just kind of already achieved everything through their practice. So these might be two different kind of poles, right? And then also just quite recently, another kind of third category has come out, which is kind of like a scholar practitioner, right? Someone who tries to kind of bring in some of the scholarly and some of the practitioner level. But I'm kind of suggesting that mostly that's used by academics who are just interested in kind of claiming a new type of knowledge. At best, this is a misrepresentation, right? Our acharyas from the past, they're extremely knowledgeable. They're citing all types of shastras, and they're extremely based in practice and ritual and sadhana, right? It wasn't just scholar over here, practitioner over here, but it's actually combined, right? The pursuit of liberating knowledge is also a legitimate form of sadhana, right? Jnana marga or jnana marga is highlighted by many great acharyas and gurus and saints, right? So there is actually a pursuit of knowledge as well. And it's also important to note here that ritual and knowledge work hand in hand, right? It kind of falls apart if you say, I'm not interested in any knowledge, I just want to do the practice. Well, you still have to learn the practice, isn't it, right? So they're not completely separated domains of knowledge and practice. One actually informs the other. And practice, be it ritual or even meditation, is fully based in a knowledge system. You know, one cannot exist without the other. So that's just one little aspect of knowledge and practice. Now, this is really interesting, the Shastra Jalam. This is the ensnaring net of scriptures, right? This is people who completely go into scriptures, which are very diverse and very vibrant, and then they become trapped actually by the scriptures. And this is one of the main critiques. The reason we have a slide on this is one of the main critiques of people who say, there's really not much to learn. We don't have to learn anything else. We're just doing the practice. And if you learn too much, you might be entrapped by the forest of knowledge, or you'll be lost along the way, right? Well, this is kind of an interesting way that they used to write about it, Shastra Jalam. So it is true, right? Spiritual endeavors aimed at liberation from samsara can also prop the ego, right? And reinforce egotistic separation from Shiva, Anavamala. And priding yourself in different competencies, whether it be reciting Vedas, doing puja perfectly, or knowing all of the doctrines. Of course, those are ways in which you can be caught in a type of net of delusion. The interesting thing for us as tantric sadhakas and people who are practicing tantric sadhana is that the tantric revelation is textual by nature, right? It's particularly kind of tricky because you need the texts in order to practice, actually. And we'll get into that in a second. And, you know, despite the countless gurus who were rebuked for pride they had in their learning before receiving oral instructions, some of which they were kind enough to write down for us, which also complicates oral and written, right? So I've heard the higher teachings in the oral tradition only. When then some people said, well, I only read something before. So, you know, but if your guru tells you something and you write it down, is it from the oral tradition or the written tradition, right? So it gets a little complicated, right? But the main point, of course, is that the study of shastras and scriptures can only point you towards the way to liberation and never actually provide it. Just like every type of sadhana, it points you in the right way, right? And so it's just important to remember that. Following them blindly, meaning the scriptures and the shastras and the texts, and instrumentalizing them to satisfy your preconceived notions and desires is all too common error in spiritual life, made by neophytes, meaning beginners, and established practitioners alike, right? So this is kind of maybe our last warning before we get into learning more, right? So how do we make sure we don't become deluded by the study of scriptures? And how do we make sure we aren't deluded by any of our methods, be it ritual worship or becoming lost in the knowledge, or any of our pursuits or sadhanas, right? We can become lost in knowledge. Some people can also become lost in puja, perhaps, you know, becoming purely mechanical puja repetition, no bhavanam, nothing, you know, that also can be ensnaring, right? And so we have something called the three classic sources of knowledge, right? It's kind of a triadic epistemology, to use a kind of fancy term, but this is basically means a tripod of knowledge. And it's answering a very basic question. How do we know what we know is true? How do we know what we know is true? And so there's three sources traditionally uh, for for this. First one, of course, is the guru, right? And the guru is usually the messenger of an earlier and a higher authority. It's not just one guru, right? There's guru, there's guruji, there's guru garu, right? It's not just Ayya, it's not just the guruji, there's a lineage, a parampara, right? A whole entire lineage of gurus. So that's the first one. The second one actually is the Shastra, right? And this is kind of seen as an eternal, timeless authority, an extremely important part of this deciding of what we know, if what we know, is it true or not? Shastra is a great place for that. And the third one, of course, is extremely important. And that's your personal experience, subject to maturity, experience, and, in Janma and birth. If any of these are lacking, it's not necessarily going to all fall apart, right? But if you had a tripod and one was lacking, it's going to be wobbly at best, maybe fall apart at worst. So that's what we mean by having these three aspects, three traditional sources of knowledge. So whenever we have a personal experience, maybe we had something happen to us, check with the guru, right? Okay, guru says, okay, this was a legitimate experience. Okay, check with the Shastra as well. Okay, everything matches. The Shastra says this happens like this, the guru told me having this, and I also experienced it like this. Most likely, this is going to be 100%, right? If you don't have one of these aspects in there, like I said, it can become a little bit wobbly. Of course, many people often bring up, Ramana Maharshi, or really great, amazing saints who historically didn't have a guru, and they say, well, he didn't have a guru, he didn't have Shastra, perhaps he just had personal experience, he just woke up one morning and had a near-death experience. That is true, but at the same time, I do remember an interesting story about Ramana Maharshi, where they asked him, you never had a guru, then you do talk about the guru. And he said, who said I never had a guru, right? So it's very interesting to know that just because we cannot see someone's guru, or we just cannot see that they're involved in the Shastra, we cannot see their personal experience, doesn't necessarily mean that that's not happening, right? So anyways, these are the three main points here. Now, what does learning and study actually contribute to? Now, this is the real reason why we're here in the first place, right? Because knowledge leads to conviction and the destruction of doubt, right? Inhibition and doubt actually can be very dangerous on the spiritual path and even cause one to give up sadhana altogether. Doubt is what happens, to some people, and it can cause them to give up sadhana completely, right? Knowledge can alleviate certain types of confusion and doubt. Also, unstable mental energy and proliferation of vikalpa, right, distracting thoughts, often accompany confusion, tension, stagnation, and lethargy. So if you become knowledgeable in what you're doing, if you hear some voices from the side, hey, that's actually not even a real thing, it's all a waste of time, we're doing this the wrong sadhana, you're supposed to be doing this sadhana over here. If you have no knowledge, you might think, oh my God, I believe it, and I should go over there. But if you start to gain more knowledge, you'll know, hey, actually, that's not true. This is the correct sadhana to do, right? So that's the first point. Second point refines our view of reality, the darshana, right? The map of understanding ourselves and the practice that we do and the world too. So if we have a little bit of knowledge, or even gaining more and more knowledge about Sri Vidya Darshana, we can understand things a little bit more comprehensively, especially when it comes to the practice, right? And then, of course, increases bhavana, contemplation on the deity, critical aspect of practice. We even have Bhavana Upanishad, right? Having that inner feeling and knowing about interconnections and feeling interconnections in the practice is a very critical point in sadhana. And that actually contributes to the fourth point we put here, which is that knowing the deeper knowledge of ritual actually contributes to efficacy. Now, of course, this is actually a big topic. We're doing millions of mantra japas, nothing's happening. What went wrong? Well, here's the words of Bhaskaraya, right? Perhaps one of the most famous Sri Vidya acharyas. The utterance of sounds without knowledge of their meaning doesn't bear fruit, just as the offering of ghee into ashes without fire does not burn brightly. So, wow, this is extremely striking. Not only that, devotion only to external rites without a proper understanding of their inner significance is like a body without life or a puppet without its strings. So this is from his Varivasya Rahasya, which is an exposition on all of the internal and inner, deeper meanings of Sri Vidya that he wrote. So there is an idea that if you do know about inner aspect, esoteric aspect, these kind of contemplations, your practice will actually gain efficacy, right? You will be able to animate your practice with much more, or with a more robust vigor, and also move things better if you have a knowledge, especially about significance and the meanings. Okay, so let's just take one quick example here. Fundamental difference between study and practice. Case in point, everyone here most likely has done Atmana before, right? Atma Tattvam Shoryami Swaha, right? Vidya Tattvam Shoryami Swaha. But what is Atma Tattvam? What is Vidya Tattvam? What is Shiva Tattvam? And what is the Sarva Tattvam? Well, actually, Atma Tattva, Vidya Tattva, and Shiva Tattva are three classifications, groupings, right? It's kind of a shorthand for actually writing a whole list of tattvas, right? We won't get into tattvas now, but we've listed them here for you, and we have a very nice chart on the left. Tattvas can be kind of thought of as chains or links or types of principles of reality, right? The whole reality which we experience is created up with tattvas. So when we're doing this practice, actually sipping the water and purifying, right? Shodayami, swaha. When we're purifying Atma Tattvas, we're actually purifying a whole list of tattvas, right? So when you're actually done with Achamanam, if you're doing it with deep bhavanam, puja is complete. I mean, you've just purified all 36 tattvas. You should be there now with 37 tattva, with 36. No, so it's showing you that there's a complete system of meaning and very deep aspect in something just as simple as sipping water. And the beautiful thing about puja is that many aspects of the puja are actually complete in and of themselves, right? So all this completeness contributes to even a greater completeness, right? So this is just a quick little example here, what we mean by how knowledge and practice can work together. And so if you learn about the tattvas and you learn about each individual one, of course, next time you do, Atma Tattvam Shoryami Swaha, there'll be more of a feeling, more of a bhavana, right? Okay, let's move on here and get into the tantric revelation aspect. So elements of Indic textual universe, one book. Of course, we all know there's many types of books, many types of what you might call genres, right? Veda, Upanishad, Purana, Itihasa, Agama, Samhita, and of course, Tantra. Now, Tantra is interesting and different from all of these other aspects of the Indic textual universe, if we can call it something like that. Because, of course, they're all interrelated, right? There's tantric elements in Veda. There's Vedic elements in Tantric. There's Upanishad in Veda, right? They're all actually interrelated. As one friend of mine said, trying to discern these is like trying to herd cats. Cats have their own mind. They go wherever they want to go. They're over here, then they go over there. If you put them in one group, they might make another group. So it's kind of like that. There's all different interconnections all around the place. It's very hard to discern one from the other. But even that being said, there is still some qualities and some interesting aspects of tantric revelation which are specialized, right? And the main one, which we're going to talk about today, is a sacred dialogue. And this isn't really talked about so much, but tantras are usually based on a conversation, right? And so here's a little quick definition we've put here. It spreads, the vast subject matter based on essences and formulas. That's the translation from mantra, probably. It gives liberation, therefore it is called tantra. Okay, so previously we mentioned tantras are textual by nature. Okay, what does that exactly mean? Well, tantras actually are the sacred speech of the deity, right? Of the devata. Why? Because they're in a question and answer format, right? Prashna and uttara. So this is the way in which the tantric revelation emerges, right, as a special conversation, usually between Shiva and the Devi, but not exclusively, right? So why do they not know what's the need for this conversation in the first place? Well, here's another nice little quote. Having assumed the roles of Guru and Shishya, it is the Lord Sadashiva himself, through the phases of asking questions and answering in a dialogue, that made the Tantra descend. The conversation of the Supreme with itself. The conversation of the Supreme with itself. So now we're in the non-dual aspect, right? Is the establishment of the highest type of relation, parasambandha, the identity of the highest subject with itself, right? This is the specialization of Tantra. This is about how the self relates to the self in a very close, very intimate, and very special way, right? Through the question and answer of Guru Shishya, and also the question and answer of the Devi and Shiva. Tantras are deity-specific revelations, right? So we should be having our own Sri Vidya revelations then, if this is true. And teachings often focus on efficacy of practice in the form of a conversation. So usually the Tantric teachings have something to do with, we're doing so many things all the time, nothing's happening. What's going on? Help us, please. This is kind of one of the main conversations in the Tantric dialogue. And so we have a quick one here just to show you. This is a very standard opening Tantric question and answer session. He who has mild as well as frightful forms, right? Gora, Agora, and forms which are even more frightful than the frightful, is the embodiment of the Tantras. Wow, right? This is a Bhairav, definitely. After bowing with her head to the frightening Bhairav, who is Bhairavi's beloved, who bestows frightening success, who exists from all eternity, all pervading, uncreated, existing in a state of supreme bliss, who is the God of gods, the master of the world, who dwells in his own domain, who is very frightful, yet non-terrifying, who destroys all the frightful things. The goddess Bhairavi fell prostrate in front of Bhairava devotedly and asked him about the knowledge which truly bestows liberation as well as worldly success, right? Bhoga and moksha. The goddess said, Devi Uvacha, you have explained the systems of mantras several times, O Lord of gods, but people do not succeed in the practice of yoga and such other practices, however hard they try, right? This is just like, we're doing everything, we still don't have success, help us. They do not succeed even with prescribed rituals. The proof of success is lacking. You have fooled the minds of many of those who have performed great sacrifices, O great Lord, and even the minds of those who have been reciting the mantras, making great effort, no doubt. How is it that these extraordinary mantras given by you, do not succeed? You have confused the whole world and even your disciples with this, O Shankara. What do you gain from deluding the world, O best of gods? What a great question, huh? Thus spoke the goddess to Bhairava, the leader of the gods. And the Lord smiled the following words. I didn't want to go on, but I thought I don't want to leave you with a cliffhanger. So we'll just quickly answer what Bhairava said here. Listen attentively, O goddess. I will answer everything you have asked now. I will tell you the truth as it is. The mantras I have already taught can fulfill all desires, but they are protected through my power, O goddess, strict in the observance of religious vows. I have seen that ignorant people have abandoned their purificatory rites everywhere, and that mean people have violated the established practices and rules of conduct, right? So he's become weary of humans, of people, of upasikas, and just whatever's going on in the world. Therefore, the vigor of mantras, mantra viryam, has been protected. And through this protected vitality, the mantras themselves are protected and the letters are left without the vitality, become solitary. Sometimes it's described as kind of like dead syllables, right? It's not empowered. Their vitality is hidden, and that's hidden even if they are used according to prescription. So that must be terrifying. You're doing the right thing and still it's hidden. Oh, great goddess, this is why they do not succeed, even if one recites them 1 billion times. For those who do not know how to obtain the hidden vitality, liberation of the soul, success is not far off. So we'll just shut it down now. But this is a particularly universal type of problem in Tantric revelation. You know, we are not making success, we need help, and tell us how to do it. Now, these types of Tantric revelations actually are all over the place, right? There's Jain Tantra, the Buddhist Tantra, There's Sri Vaishnava Tantra, and of course, there's Shaiva Tantra, right? Now, where does Sri Vidya exist in this whole entire tantric universe? Well, here we have different faces of Shiva, and each face kind of reveals and speaks a different revelation, a different agama. Sri Vidya is related to the southern face, Agora, which is in the Bhairava Tantra stream, which comes into Kaula Tantra. All of these types of revelations actually very complicated, different numbers of texts, different types of acharyas, and different sampradayas. And we won't get into all of the things because we're just focusing on Sri Vidya. But the Nitya Shodashi Karnava Tantra is one of our principal tantras, which we'll see here in a second. And it does explain a number of the related texts, 64 texts actually, 64 tantras. And maybe in the future, we can go through all the 64 and really have a look at the very minute details of Sri Vidya. But this is just to give you a quick glimpse into that different faces of Sadashiva reveal different types of agamas, right? So we have Garuda Tantra, Vama Tantra, Buddha Tantra, and Siddhanta Agama. Now, the descent of Tantra as well. We talked about Tantra as a textual revelation. Well, there's a concept called Tantra Avatara, right? The descent of Tantra, that the conversation actually existed in something like, say, 24,000 verses, right? And it was in the height in Satya Yuga, you had 24,000 verses of a particular Tantra. But as time went on, right, in the Yuga system, the world becomes a little more degraded and people become degraded more. And the Tantra actually starts shrinking, right? So it might start 24,000. The next Yuga might just get down to 12,000. By the time we get it, it might just be a couple thousand, right? So there's the idea that the descent of Tantra into the world as a sacred conversation gets limited, right? And this is important as well to understanding Tantra as a textual revelation, because we're only perhaps getting a small aspect of a much larger teaching and a much larger text. So just want to quickly mention about the Tantra Avatara. So let's just get right into Sri Vidya. Now, I think most everyone here is already practicing Sri Vidya or knows something about it. So we just briefly say that it's the tradition of worshiping Tripura Sundari, right? And within Sri Vidya, and here's something that we might not know, it's Bhairava who responds to questions from the goddess, from the Devi, in Sri Vidya. And we'll show you some examples in just a second. Many people say, well, how come it's not the Devi responding to Bhairav? That doesn't make any sense because we're worshiping Tripura Sundari, should be Tripura Sundari speaking. That's very valid, of course, but in the Tantric revelation of Sri Vidya, this is actually what we've received. This is how it is. In other traditions, the goddess actually does enlighten Bhairav, and it's the opposite way. The goddess will actually speak and answer questions to Bhairav, who is taken on the role of Shishya. So it does change. Sri Vidya, there's a quick note on Sri Vidya, usually is translated as auspicious knowledge, auspicious wisdom. But actually, Sri can actually qualify Vidya here, right? So it could be auspicious mantra. Vidya means a feminine mantra. And we get into technical mantra shastra. A Vidya means a feminine mantra of a deity, of a Devi, right? So Sri Vidya in this reading can also mean the auspicious mantra, which also falls in line with the names of the early tradition of Sri Vidya. Of course, Sri Vidya has always been there from very early times, but they also, many of the acharyas who we'll learn about in the next class, have also described Sri Vidya as the Saubhagya Sampradaya. Also Saubhagya, the Tripura Darshana. Tripura Darshana, the Darshana of Tripura, as well as the Saubhagya Sampradaya. And most interestingly, they have also described Panchadasakshari as Saubhagya Vidya, which of course for us here in 2024, when we think of Saubhagya Vidya, we might think of Saubhagya Panchadasi, but actually they're very clearly said that 15-syllabled Vidya is known as the Saubhagya Vidya. So there was more of a preeminence of Saubhagyam in the early Sri Vidya tradition. So I just wanted to point that out here. Now, where does Sri Vidya fall within the specialized tantric corpus, right? So Sri Vidya is not an island, actually. It's actually related to a number of important tantric lineages. It's not just a one-time lineage. It comes in a nexus, a whole network, if you want, of amazing and diverse tantric lineages, which we won't get into now, but at least we should know a little bit about them, right? So we have 4 transmissions. Eastern transmission, Western, Northern, and Southern. And Sri Vidya is related to the Dakshinamnaya tradition. Now we're talking about revealed Kola Tantra, right? So if we go back to the top, we have this Kola Tantra. We're in here right now. Each one of these actually breaks off into more intricate groupings. So we're right here. And when we get into Kola Tantra, then we have this. Now we have these. And so early Sri Vidya Tantras do understand Sri Vidya tradition to be the culmination of all of these teachings, which is already quite remarkable, right? And Acharyas confirm that as well. Here's a verse which kind of reinforces that as well. I worship Sri Tripura residing in Kamarupa, Jalandhara, Purnapita, and Udayana, who is the treasure house of the 4 commands. The 4 commands here means these 4 lineages, right? So Sri Vidya actually is not only related to the rest of these traditions, it kind of is the essence, right? Sri Vidya permeates all of these traditions, and it's kind of like, you might want to say, the pinnacle of these traditions. And people who are doing the Sri Chakra Puja, at the very end, there's the Amnaya Samasti Puja, where these types of Amnayas are mentioned and worshipped within Sri Chakra. And we can find this going way back to some of the earliest Sri Vidya Padhatis we've ever been able to find in a manuscript form. This type of puja and this type of system of worshiping all of the lineages within Sri Vidya was important, right? Another aspect here is the Simha Darshana, which is a very interesting classification of all of the related lineages to Sri Vidya. And we might think of Lita Sahasranama, of course, Srimat Simhasaneshwari, she sits on the Simha. Actually, all of the goddesses in this network, of this Kola Tantra network, all sit on the lion, right? And the collection of all of the Sri Vidya revelatory teachings and larger connected teachings is also known as Simha Darshana, right? The teaching of the lion. And this is a kind of empowerment that we can maybe talk about again in a later time. Just to reinforce one more time, Sri Vidya is not an island all alone by itself, but related to the larger tantric universe, like we just showed, right? Now let's get into exactly this tantric revelation of Sri Vidya, right? What is the issue that causes the revelation of Sri Vidya? Here's Nitya Shodashi Karnava Tantra, right? Let's hear what they has to say. We didn't have time to pull all the Sanskrit and all the translations. And also we'd be here for days if we decided to go through Nitya Shodashi Karnava Tantra, the principal text of Sri Vidya tradition. Right, here we go. In the Nitya Shodashi Karnava, the goddess lists all 64 tantras that have been revealed. But there seems to be, she says, there seems to be another set of teachings that are hinted at, but are never revealed. The goddess then requests Bhairav to explain the names, mantras, vidyas, mudras, and pujas of 16 special Nitya Yogini goddesses, right? Which have been hidden in all the tantras and have never been spoken before. So after more questions and answers and types of preliminaries, Bhairava finally says, to actually explain Sri Vidya, there at the very beginning is the foremost Nitya Mahatibra Sundari. So we can see from his answer that Mahatibra Sundari is a special type of goddess, of a Nitya goddess, and she's the 16th one. And so this is the tantric revelation. This is the impetus for the entire revelation of Sri Vidya, that there's something hidden There's something secret. We have all 64 tantras already, but there's something else that we're unaware of. Please enlighten us to what this is. Now, the second part of the Nitya Shodashi Karnava Tantra, but also considered to be a separate text as well, it's a little bit controversial, Yogini Hridaya Tantra. Scholars such as Pandit Vraj Vallabha Dwivedi and many others, I think even Gopinath Kaviraj, coming from the Varanasi school, these are traditional Pandits who have worked on Sri Vidya quite a lot. And we have to thank them actually for collecting manuscripts, reading them, visiting the families who hold these manuscripts and printing them as books that we can buy today. This was not just done overnight. This takes a lot of years, decades of work. And so the reason that we have Nitya Shodashi Karnava Tantra in print that we can read is due to the work of these great Pandits like I said, Pandit Dwivedi, which was only published in 1985, by the way. So it's very recent. Anyways, it was their opinion that it was actually two separate works. Nitya Shodashi Karnava Tantra is one, Yogini Hridaya Tantra is another. Other people see it actually as just one text. We won't get into it. That's more of on the side of knowledge, which might not be fully liberating, might be binding, fighting for the rest of our lives, whether or not Yogini Hridaya Tantra is part of Nitya Shodashi Karnava or not. We just let it go. But what does Yogini Hridaya Tantra say about its revelation? Well, the goddess said, "O God of gods, great God, expanding in total fullness, there are in this Vamakeshwara Tantra, which is another name for the Nitya Shodashi Karnava Tantra, many unknown elements. Please reveal them, O Bhairava." So we see again, there's something secret. There's something which is not known. Please reveal it. Bhairava says, Sri Bhairava Uvacha, "Hear, O goddess, the great secret, the heart of the yogini, Yogini Hridaya, supreme. What I tell you now out of love for you is to be kept carefully hidden. On earth, it has always been taught and received by word of mouth. It must not be given to disciples of other masters, nor to unbelievers, O goddess, nor to those who wish intensely to hear it, who do not wish intensely to hear it, or do not give over riches in dakshina." So you can see that, again, Sri Vidya here is a great secret and has been carefully hidden, right? So this is the impetus for Yogini Hridaya Tantra to come out. And as well as Nitya Shodashi Karnava Tantra, that there's something else, right? And I think we might have all felt this in our own lives, right? That no one really told us about Sri Vidya. We had to kind of seek it out ourselves, you know? We had to go to the temple. We had to more questions. We had to kind of figure it out that there was something more that we were interested in that we didn't know about, and we had to ask permission, right? We had to ask for diksha. It just isn't just given to you. It's something that you kind of have to figure out and seek yourself. Okay, we're to the takeaways already. Wow. Okay, well, just a few takeaways. I just wanted to make sure that we kind of reinforce the purpose of learning, the purpose of studying. Number one, clears doubts, right? There may be doubts in our minds, confusion from different things, different people, we hear different things. The more knowledge we have, the more doubt we'll be able to clear. Increases bhakti and bhavanam. So here, actually, knowledge can increase your bhakti. It doesn't have to be antithetical to it. You don't have to become lost in books. The more you know about the subject matter, you can kind of immerse yourself in it, right? Also, it refines our view of reality and practice. This is very helpful. Therefore, if we ever get any type of little stumbling blocks on the way, you know, did I do the nyasam right? Was it supposed to be from the thumb first, or was it supposed to be on the middle finger first? I don't know. Well, if you know that there's multiple types of nyasa, srishti, sthiti, and samhara, there's no question at all, no doubt at all. We know there's different modalities of doing nyasa. If you don't know there's different modalities of doing nyasa, you might become confused along the way. So learning more is very beneficial. Also, it builds confidence to pursue the sadhana. That means you don't wake up one morning, hopefully, and have a doubt that everything you've been doing has been a waste of time and leave. It happens to people. And if you have more knowledge, hopefully you'll be able to kind of study and understand that this actually is part of the process, that doubts come, and you should be able to overcome them, hopefully, with the grace of the Guru and the Devi, of course, as well, and your sincere sadhana. But also, like we said, the knowledge does contribute to something beyond just the practice. And also the last thing, it just empowers our rituals towards greater efficacy. We had the quotes from Bhaskarai in the beginning about not knowing the meaning of the mantras and doing the recitation. Actually, this is quite controversial in a certain sense, because many people very rightly think that you actually don't have to know a lot of the meaning. You do the mantras and some benefit will come. Some benefit will come for sure, but is it the maximum benefit that we wanted? Maybe not, right? So there is there's large groups of people who don't really think about learning anything more, but I would just encourage that if you even learn a little bit more, your practice may become more elevated. And if you learn even a little bit more than a little bit more, your practice may even take off. And I think this is the experience of many people. And I think this is the experience of Sri Vidya as well, because when we look to our foundational acharyas and texts, which we'll do in the coming weeks, we see that this is actually their experience as well, because they write about it very systematically, in a very knowledgeable way. They're very learned in multiple shastras. They do citations even, right? Something that they do in the academic world now. They were doing citations back then, citing from this tantra, citing from that tantra, making their case, making their point, and showing you that they're very knowledgeable on the practice, right? Tantric revelation is the revealed speech of the deity and is a pramana, right? Is a valid source of knowledge. Sri Vidya is a tantric revelation. There's a large corpus of sacred texts and advanced knowledge and several important acharyas who have clarified and actually created entire lineages of practice. And we'll get into them in the coming classes. There's going to be, I think, six main acharyas that we'll look at, and also we'll look at the not entire corpus of Sri Vidya texts. That's beyond our scope, but maybe some of the 20 or 30 main ones I think we can touch upon. So let's see, what time is it? It's about 2:30 almost. I think this thing is supposed to go till 3, so we might just be exactly on time. Maybe we can open it up if anybody has any questions at all on any aspects of the lecture or the subject matter. Give it a second, I guess.
Hi, Namaskaram. I put a question in the about the you shared, I think, when you were sharing about Dakshinaya Tantra, there was a accompanying image, and I'm just wondering about the deities in the image and what they symbolize.
Okay, let's see here.
Before that,
about here?
the one before, yeah, that one, the one prior, the previous slide, yeah, this one. Like, who are the deities? Is that Devi and Bhairava, or?
Oh yeah, this is Kameshwari and Kameshwara here.
And they are aspects of Shiva and Shakti?
Yeah, I think we can say that. I think we could safely say that Kameshwara and Kameshwari are aspects of Shiva and Shakti. Absolutely, especially within Sri Vidya, of course. Tripura Sundari, in the tradition of worshipping Tripura Sundari, also is perhaps equal to or very closely related to another worship of Kameshwari, right? So sometimes Tripura Sundari is named as Kameshwari. In some of the early texts, we see that the worship of Kameshwari is basically identical to the worship of Tripura Sundari. And also in Sri Vidya, we have the worship of Kameshwara as well. And so Shiva and Shakti, Devi and the goddess in a benign form, as you can see them here, they're not terrifying at all. They're very saubhagya. Kameshwari and Kameshwara would equivalent to Shiva Shakti, absolutely.
And then they are, and that's one who's prostrate, is that Shiva? Is that what does that represent?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So this would be like Sadashiva. Yeah. Let me open up the other image here for you. Kind of explain. Here we go. So here is Tripura Sundari, like Maha Tripura Sundari, right? Rajarajeswari, although with her foot down on the right-hand side, of course, we've been taught this kind of more Bala. We won't go into that, but this is kind of the pantheon. Here you can see that the Devi is sitting on the couch. Shiva is there, Sadashiva is there. She's surrounded by Saraswati and Lakshmi, and also the five Karna Devatas. Yeah. Was that answer your question?
Thanks.
Yeah. The iconography of Tripura Sundari is quite complicated, right? There's so many elements and there's so many interesting aspects of it. And who is Kameshwari? Who is Kameshwara? And who are all of these gods, right? Beneath her, holding up this bed, this pedestal. This is all kind of a more deep conversation, but it's there in Lita Sahasranama. And also in other sources too. Maybe we can go into a whole class actually on just the iconographic depictions of Tripura Sundari and describe who are all these people, why is she like this, and how does that all relate to our practice. And you'll find this all in the puja as well, right? If you look into the puja and the mantras that you're chanting directly at what time, and as you're building the mandala really, in Sri Chakra Puja, you'll see that these different elements are kind of building up the cosmology of the Devi.
And is the prostrate Shiva like symbolizing union between Shakti and Shiva? Is that why she's, or is that
yeah, absolutely. You know, the thing is, when we get into symbolism, usually symbolism will be a little complicated and multiple meanings to every symbol, right? So we might say that this could be represented as union, absolutely. But also we could say perhaps this is showcasing her supremacy, right? She's sitting on top of him. She's the supreme. She's Maharajni. She's Srimad Simhasaneshwari. You know, she's the ultimate, right? The goddess is the ultimate above Shiva even. So there's another symbolism there. So yeah, the symbolic study is very deep.
Brian, do you want to mention about the Panchabrahmas, just to kind of put it in a better perspective?
Yeah, Panchabrahma. Wow. Yeah, maybe you want to chime in on it.
I just wanted to add that the idea of these five, actually, someone wants to read about a bit more about that. The more detailed description is available in Lalita Pakyana, which describes in great detail her palace where she resides and gives also very detailed description of her seat. But here we see the five Brahmas. So you see the four below and the fifth one that she sits on. And these really symbolize the Panchakrityas of divine, right? The five divine actions, with Sadashiva, who she sits on, symbolizing the Anugraha, and the ones below symbolizing the creation, support, destruction, veiling, and then unveiling, which is the Anugraha, which is the Sadashiva that she sits on. So below you will see Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and Ishvara, and Sadashiva is the one that she sits on. So that's kind of a brief high-level overview of the deeper symbolic meaning of these Brahmas.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Thank you, Max.
Could you explain the meaning of Sri Chakra? What does it symbolize?
Oh my gosh. Well, we talked about one aspect or one symbol or one thing having multiple meanings. My Sri Chakra might be the par excellence of that. I mean, in a short answer, you can say Sri Chakra means everything, right? It means absolutely everything.
It's the you mean the manifestation, like the whole existence?
Exactly. Yeah, you can say it means the whole existence. I'll just say some common ways that I've at least read and heard about it. A map of reality, right? It's a process of cosmogony, right? How one becomes many, right? How does the universe come into existence? The Shi Chakra shows you that graphically, how Bindu, which is actually empty, becomes the entire universe of physical reality in the Bhupura, right? So Sri Chakra has many deep meanings. One lesser known one, which I think I might have wrote about before, is that Sri Chakra is actually the expansion of consciousness, right? This we can get when you study a little bit more in the Yogini Hridaya Tantra. We see that it's consciousness itself becoming, first experiencing itself, and then becoming aware of itself, and then enjoying itself, and then manifesting into the entire reality, right? Consciousness and awareness of reality. And the Shi Chakra is kind of a movement within consciousness, showing you the krama, showing you the cycle of how this actually all unfolds. That's a bit esoteric, but it's definitely a legitimate answer to what is the Shi Chakra. And also, it's just Shi Chakra is also considered to be the body, quote unquote, the body of the goddess. She is the Shi Chakra, right? And so, yeah, the Shi Chakra just goes on and on. I think we could do several classes just on Shi Chakra, meaning of Shi Chakra.
I mean, if I have just one more question. Maybe like we talked about, like this is part of Kaula Marga, right? Sri Vidya.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is it like so is it like Vamachara? Like does this involve Panjamagara and all the worships?
Well, different acharas will exist for every lineage, right? So, depending on which parampara you're from, different lineages, some people will be sitting in the cremation ground, right? If you go to Tarapid or if you go to Kamakya, there's cremation ground there, people are doing sadhana. That's a different achara, that's not what we practice, but is it legitimate? Yeah, it's legitimate. People do it. There's also people sitting in Shankaracharya mutts, pouring milk on Shi Chakra and all, worshiping that way. Is that legitimate? 1000% legitimate. So different acharas, different modes of conduct will be there. There's many modes of conduct. Usually the guru will instruct you in a mode of conduct. So yeah, Kola Tantra doesn't necessarily mean Vamachara.
Okay.
You can practice Kola Tantra without any Vamachara at all. You can do, nowadays we have Samayachara and Kolachara and Mishra-chara and things, but actually different modes in the way you approach the deity, primarily through the types of offerings you do. Usually it's the same mantras, it's the types and the modes of worship will change. But yeah, those are all legitimate aspects. But yeah, like I said, Kola Tantra doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be, transgressive or anything. Panchamakas, there's a lot of diversity in Kolachara. Usually, Kolachara does get associated with certain types of more transgressive practices, but it doesn't have to be, not at all.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
No, I mean I answered the big question because I was on the impression that Kaulachara is Vamachara.
No, look into the different acharas. It gets complicated because everything has almost the same name sometimes. So one name, multiple meanings. So look into different acharas like Mishra Achara, Kaula Achara, and things like that. And you can see some of the principal Kaula Tantra texts actually say, whatever keeps your mind firmly fixed on reality, that should be done. You don't have to wear jata and be in the graveyard, and you don't have to be necessarily in the house, in a householder. You can be either one, right? You can be in a variety of ashramas, a variety of lifestyles, and still practice kolachara. Some acharas, of course, are only for particular types of people, right? Gaudiya Bhabas and sadhus like that. We cannot just decide to pick up one day and go do that. That's going to end in disaster. So there are, different acharas, and there's different acharas in the same lineage. That's also a bit confusing, right? So you say, oh, Sri Vidya, we offer like this and we do the puja like this. Then you go to Bengal and you see a very different Sri Vidya. And then you go to Nepal and you see Sri Vidya Tripura with a skull garland on. Like what? You're doing Sri Vidya? Yes, we're doing Sri Vidya. Panchadasakshi, everything, Navarna Puja. He has a skull garland on though. Yeah, that's how they do there. So in the same type of darshana in Sri Vidya, we'll have actually different achara.
Actually, maybe related. Could you define Kaula Tantra?
Oh my gosh. Well, I wasn't expecting that question. Let's see. If we might say that Tantra is a type of specialized teaching, a revelatory teaching focused on efficacy of practice to make things work faster, or that we've done a million things and nothing's worked. So now we have the Tantric revelation to help us in efficacy of practice. Kaula Tantra might be considered as a special aspect of Tantric revelation that goes on beyond fixation of the mind, right? So conceptualization, a lot of Kaula practice, I think, try to go beyond conceptualization, right? That might be a defining feature. But there's so much variation and diversity within Kaula Tantra, like we discussed, with different acharas and different aspects. Kaula Achara is one definition that could fit everything accurately would be a bit hard. But I think conceptualization, Kaula Tantra does. And the other thing about Kaula Tantra, we just say since we're on the topic, is that Kaula Tantra actually is in multiple traditions, right? So in Buddhism, they have also Kaula Tantra. Aspects of Kaula Tantra exist in other dharmic traditions, which also complicates it if we're really trying to figure out what is Kaula Tantra actually at its core. But I think at its core, we can say that it does try to go beyond conceptualization and efficacy of practice. What a great question. Anybody else have a hand was up?
I got a quick question. Thanks,
Oh, yeah.
thanks so much for organizing this. I come from a different sampradaya, so I'm just sort of visiting and listening in. I'm just going to ask two questions that's going to sort of follow on from previous questions, which I think is quite interesting. Something that I find quite valuable is sort of trying to take what is external and then move it internal. The previous something someone previously asked was the meaning of the Sri Chakra and what is one and how it expands. Could you tell us a little bit about there are two kramas which I find very interesting, which is Srishti and Samhara, that from one to many and from many to one. And I was, what's your perspective on that being a sort of a internal journey per se?
Oh, okay, there we are. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so curious now that you've said that you come from a different sampradaya. If you would share after or even now which sampradaya you come from, and if it is a Sri Vidya or not.
No, I practice Sri Vidya. I'm based in London. It's quite late now, but I thought I'd definitely join in.
Oh yeah.
We share the same Parma Guru. So my Parma Guru is Samritanandana Saraswati.
Oh, okay.
My Sri Guru is Arunamba Sahitya Karunamaya. He's based in Bangalore, but now they're based in Kanji.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
Okay,
think
absolutely.
it was sort of like extended family, I think.
Of course, yeah. We're all in the family. I thought maybe he's coming from Kali Krama or some
No,
some
not
completely different lineage.
not that.
No, but that's also fine. Everybody's welcome. This is open to everyone. So the question, just as a quick reminder, just is about the kramas, Srishti krama and Samhara krama, and an internalization of practice, and how that. What are my views on the internalization of practice based on the teachings that we've discussed here today? The one becoming the many and the many becoming the one. They're really kind of two movements, in my estimation, of the same thing, right? We have a concept called spanda, right? The vibratory essence of creation, you might say, right? There's a type of fundamental movement in consciousness, a vibration, an energy, right? Spanda Kardika. This is all developed highly in Kashmir Shaivism, which is incredibly important for Sri Vidya Darshana and Sri Vidya doctrine. Actually, when you think of spanda, for people who don't know, it's a type of vibration, that the universe is vibrating, it's alive. Consciousness is not static. It's not just sitting there in some void. It actually is moving. the movement actually is a srishti and samhara, right? It's an expansion and then a contraction. It's going out and then it's going back in, right? And so when you do that over and over, you can see that's where the movement actually comes from. And Sri Chakra is moving, actually. It's not static. It's completely moving. And so the different kramas do exist. We can see people who worship in different ways. There's even Sthiti krama as well, mentioned in Sri Vidya Tantra, which is kind of interesting. We don't have time to get into it now, but there's even Sthiti krama puja. But in terms of internalization of practice, the most common thing which I've heard and I've understood is that people who are kind of on the householder path and doing the Kaula Marga, for example, they are more on the side of samhara. They're going from the many dissolving, right? Paradigmatically reducing, destroying, not destroying, into oneness. Whereas people who are doing more of the samayachara, maybe like sannyasis or something like that, they don't start with the many, they start with the one, and they go the opposite way. And that's a lot of internalization of practice, and that's expounded by Lakshmidhara in his commentary on Saundya Lahari, and the samayachara purely internal method of worship, which is supposed to be highly elevated. There's no puja paddhatis, there's no meru, nothing. We're doing all inside. This is quite a common Kerala as well. Personally, I think that all those elements exist as part of Sri Chakra Puja as it is, but some people, based on achara, don't do external ritual. So it can become internalized completely.
I think it's sort of interesting that you sort of started the presentation with the nets and the webs that you can get caught up in, right? And part of that web is the getting stuck in the diversity of acharas and sort of comparing and sort of thinking, well, what's right and what's wrong? Am I better? Am I worse? And things like that. But actually, you just sort of, I don't know, from my humble experience, everyone might be different. You sort of find one that works, a sampradaya that you echo with, and then it takes you forward, right? At least that's my understanding. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And those change too over time, right? So different acharas you may practice in your youth, and it might change by the time you become middle-aged or even senior. You might switch methods and modes. Great question. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us as well in the late time. Okay. Any other questions?
When if no one else has questions, then like how do we proceed from here? Because I know you presented the we will be having 3 sessions, but again, like without proper guidance and how do we start learning? Because I'm sure that learning or reading from book and just practicing it will not help us, because there are things like meter, chandas, and nasas, and all those things which guru has to teach, especially even the mantras. If you are not pronouncing it with proper meter and chandas, it's pretty much ineffective. So
Right.
but and you already discussed the things you don't do, but like we are like in void, like okay, how do we proceed from this? Is just reading the book. You mentioned you'll be you know giving us the text, but I just reading it, and even if we read it, we may not be understanding the true meaning. Most of the times it's not that straightforward either.
No, the tantras are not an easy walk in the park for sure. They're very difficult.
Yeah, and as you explained, like I think Shiva himself has nailed down so that it doesn't fall in the wrong hand. You should, for some things, you have to remove that nail before even start practicing.
Well, some graces must be there already to even be interested in it in the first place. Moving forward, I think for people who are at least in Sri Vidya Temple Society, we have our Sri Guru, or you have your Sri Guru, and that's also, the best place to go to learn. I did think about creating a small little book recommendation list just for a little study, like what should Lita Sahasranam commentary is nice. Is there any book I can get? But the crux of it, of course, is in the practice, and this knowledge was meant to enhance your practice. So I don't know where you are, or if you have a Sri Vidya Guru or not.
No, I'm in Germany actually. Like it's
Oh.
pretty. I mean, from the internet, it's very difficult to find a proper person, and because there are like lot of, because I know people, or I heard about, like, you know, people practicing Sri Vidya, the Dashama Vidya, and getting wrong upadeshas, and like their life getting all messed up because like like
Yeah.
so.
Well, you know, finding the guru and getting on the right path for you is a process which takes time and a lot of personal reflection and inner journey. And that's the best. Moving forward from here, from this class, to the next classes of texts and acharyas, where we learn about some of the ancient and important acharyas. Yeah, I think, you know, I think Aya always says learn Lita Sahasranama and chant Lita Sahasranama, and then that is the best way to start your practice. So from what I hear, it's not that you want to start learning more, you want to start practice actually as well.
Learning and practice. I mean, yeah.
So that you
it
need a
all
guru, and then the
because,
best way to start that is Sahasranama japa.
yeah, because the chanting it without understanding, or bhavana, it's moot.
Yeah, but we have to learn the chanting first and then learn the bhavana second. If we don't even know the mantra, then we cannot do the nyasam.
Yeah.
So first we have to get some initiation and get some practice under our belt, so to speak. Then we can learn a bit more, and that's what this is today. And
Oh
this
no, I
class is
mean
the
the
kind of
question was because it was very specifically mentioned that there will be no guidance on finding the guru.
Yeah, I don't
That's
have
why
any recommendation for you.
yeah, that's why
I'm
the
sorry,
question.
I don't. Yeah. Okay, someone else had a question? Oh, Amita?
Srimatre Namaha. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Max, for this. This is really very nice, actually. My question is a little bit esoteric, I guess, sort of.
We thrive in that. It's okay.
Do you think that like Guru Garu and all the other acharyas are like still accessible on another plane, like maybe not on the earthly world, but do you think that one can still connect with them?
I'm gonna let Max answer the question because he has done so much research into Guru Parampara and into Guru Garu, as well as Guruji and Aya, everyone in the whole lineage. So I defer to Max.
Well, yeah, I've been working on doing the research on our parampara for maybe better part of 5-6 years now, and talk to many people, visit many places, and people told me many times that Guruji or Guru Garu would come to them in their dreams. They would have visions, have spoken directly with people who had taken classes with me in Devipuram, the residential classes, who came there specifically just because he appeared to them. Now, he appeared to me as well. I mean, that's how my journey started as well. And I've never met Guruji, and like in 2017, he came in my dream, and that's kind of a lot of things for me have changed. So I have a personal experience firsthand that I can testify to. So that definitely is happening. When the physical guru is gone, it really doesn't mean much. It's not that he doesn't exist or he stopped guiding people. It's just simply not the case. He's definitely around. The Guru Kripa is well and alive in our parampara, and many people can testify to that, including myself. So Guruji, people have seen Guruji, people have seen Guru Garu, Aya. I mean, it's on and on. There's many different stories. So that's a resounding yes. They're definitely around. They're definitely there to help us, to guide us, and we are very fortunate to be connected to them through our parampara.
Anyone else? We have 10 minutes left, but we don't have to continue on if everyone's done.
I got a question, but this is more of a practical one. So,
Oh, well, I won't give advice, but let's see what the question is. We all
no,
might
it's
learn together.
very much regarding text. So,
Oh, good.
these texts are in Sanskrit. So not
Yeah.
everyone sort of understands Sanskrit, right? So the way a way around that has worked for me is to sort of find texts that are in Sanskrit, sort of scan the text and then put them through ChatGPT and translate them and then work out a commentary and retranslate them. So it's an extremely slow and painful process. So accessibility is
Imagine without ChatGPT.
yeah, imagine without, well, yeah, the downside is so it's a slow yet painful process. So I don't know I don't know whether I'm just stuck or falling behind or whether there are any other resources or ways to sort of access text much
Yeah,
easier.
well, it just depends what text you're interested in, really. And unfortunately, in SriVidya, we haven't had a lot of recent publications. We're trying to change that on the side. We're trying to bring new translations of the SriVidya world. Some of the main texts of SriVidya were translated actually by John Woodruff and team back in 1918, right? So Kamakala Vilasa is a foundational text for SriVidya. It explains, talk about the meaning of Sri Chakra. Punya Nandanatha, it gives us an incredible exposition on Sri Chakra. 1918 it was translated to English. It hasn't been translated since. Actually, it was translated by a couple of professors at the University of Sampurnanda, Sanskrit University in Varanasi, but they actually just completely ripped off John Woodruff's translation, put their names on it, and it's incredibly terrible, but that's what they did. And you can buy that one and be disappointed, like I was, and many others. Many SriVidya gurus actually spoke out against them and said, why would you do such a thing? But anyways, aside from that, Adiyar Library also published some SriVidya translations in English. They also did Shakti Upanishads. They did Varivasi Rahasya Bhaskaraya, and a couple other SriVidya texts, but there hasn't been a lot of production of translations in SriVidya, unlike other sampradayas, like Sri Vaishnavism's new translations coming out all the time. Other Shaiva, especially in the Kashmir Shaiva side, it's been going on since the 70s. Swami Lakshmanju, as well as all of his disciples, many of whom turned to academics and made entire careers out of Kashmir Shaiva texts. So on that side, there's loads, but for SriVidya, there's really not a large corpus of texts in translation. And that's in text of translations of any regional language. Tamil, Kannada, Hindi, English, whatever. It's out of Sanskrit to anything. We have a huge lack. And that's just where we are, yeah.
How do you trust texts and how do you trust translations? Is it more of an academic informed decision to trust things, or is it a hunch, or is it just a lack of any text? So you just got to sort of
Yeah, I guess that there's only one and you don't have any knowledge of the source language and you have to necessarily trust it to a certain degree. But the trust level has to be developed in terms of the comprehension. So if the vocabulary is bad, maybe we have to try to see maybe they just used the wrong vocabulary, but translation was actually good. Or on the other side, you might be able to say like, well, this was just a bad translation and the bad vocabulary completely. So how will you know? Well, go back to the tripod, Guru, Shastra, and personal experience. So what do you feel about the text? Then ask your Guru and then check the rest of the Shastras related around it. Maybe that would be one way to do it. But yeah, it's never good to just completely trust blindly a translation or even a text for that matter, right? We're supposed to, Guruji said we should be critically minded, right? The Guru Paduka, what was it? Inquiry and what was it?
bliss and self-inquiry.
Yes. So we shouldn't just necessarily read and trust, but and also there's so many levels of meaning, right? So you read Yogini Hridaya Tantra in translation in English today, it seems boring maybe. Give it a few weeks, try again. Try again in 5 years after you've been doing puja and japa, something might just hit, because ultimately we're going beyond the words, right? So if this might be the answer which I meant to say, if there's that internal feeling, that flash, that pratibha, the intuition that wow, then that's beyond any language actually, whether it's Sanskrit, Tamil, or whatever. It's the pashanti, the paravach that we're going for actually beyond words. Maybe that's the best way. You'll feel it inside, maybe. Is that it? Anyone else? Well, I just thank everybody so much for your kind attention and also for joining us on this journey into Sri Vidya textual revelation. And hopefully we all learned a few things, at least about basis of Tantra, basis of Tantric revelation as a parasambandha, as a beautiful relationship of the self with the self, which is not necessarily found in other types of revelations like Purana and Veda and things. So it's a specialized thing. All right, thank you so much. Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha.
Thanks, Prayanaya and Maxaya, for sharing your knowledge. And thanks everyone for joining. We will continue this next week, next Saturday and Sunday. Thank you.